Chosen one, this message isn't just a reminder, it's confirmation. You've felt the warfare, you've felt the weight, and deep down, you've sensed it. Something, somewhere, tried to take you out. Emotionally, spiritually, mentally, even physically. You were marked, not because of what you did wrong, but because of the light you carry. A spiritual hit was ordered on your life. The enemy saw your potential, your anointing, your future, and it scared them. So they sent something, someone, an assignment of darkness to destroy you. But here's the twist. When that force got close, when the spiritual assassins stepped into your atmosphere, your aura, your divine protection, your God-given energy made it bow. What was sent to break you was broken. What was sent to destroy you was disarmed. This is your story. Let's break it down into 7 real, powerful, and deeply relatable chapters so you understand just how much authority you really walk in. Before we begin, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe, because this message is for the chosen ones who were spiritually marked for destruction, yet rose untouched, undefeated, and divinely protected. If this message stirs something deep in your soul, drop the number 77 in the comments. It's not just a number, it's a sacred signal that what was sent to end you has now bowed before the power you carry. Only the truly chosen will stay until the end. And those who do will receive the insight, the strength, and the divine clarity they've been sensing but couldn't yet name. Every time you return to this message, more of your hidden strength will awaken. What once hunted you will fear you. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Why the hit was ordered. Let's be honest. Your life has never been normal. From the very beginning, something about you disrupted the atmosphere. You weren't just different, you were set apart. Even as a child, you could feel the tension in rooms others called home. You sensed things people pretended not to notice. You had a spiritual sensitivity before you even had the words to describe it. You stood out in ways that made others uncomfortable. You asked questions no one else dared to ask. You felt deeply, saw clearly, and loved purely. But instead of being celebrated, you were often pushed aside, rejected, excluded, envied. Not because of what you did, but because of who you are. You threatened the comfort of those still asleep just by being awake. People mistook your sensitivity for weakness. They labeled your wisdom as arrogance. But underneath all that misunderstanding was a simple truth. You were marked by God before you were ever noticed by the enemy. You weren't born to blend in. You were born to break cycles. You carry within you a generational assignment, a divine blueprint that didn't begin with you, but was entrusted to you. You don't just have talent, you have purpose. You don't just survive adversity, you turn it into fuel for transformation. And that kind of power shakes the foundations of darkness. The spiritual hit on your life wasn't random. It was calculated. The moment you decided to rise, the moment you chose healing over bitterness, forgiveness over vengeance, obedience over popularity, truth over comfort, that's when the alarm sounded in the spirit realm. You became visible in a way that terrified hell. It wasn't your perfection that made you dangerous, it was your surrender. When someone fully surrenders to divine will, they become a vessel for the miraculous. And that, more than anything, is what darkness fears. Not brute strength, not loud ambition, but quiet obedience, sacred alignment, a heart that listens and follows even when it hurts. That's what you did, and that's why the warfare intensified. You may have thought it was just life falling apart, but in reality, you were being targeted, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. Because you were starting to remember who you are. You were breaking out of old patterns, destroying generational curses, shaking off false identities. You were stepping into authority, and hell doesn't take that lightly. You've endured betrayals you never saw coming. Nights where you cried so hard, your soul felt empty. Seasons of isolation where it seemed like even God was silent. But that silence wasn't abandonment. It was refinement. You were being trained in private for a battle you didn't know was coming. Because here's the truth. The hit on your life wasn't about your past. It was about your future. The enemy tried to take you out early because he saw what you'd become later. He saw the chains you'd break, the people you'd inspire, the light you'd carry into places others fear to go. Your name was known in hell before you ever fully accepted it in heaven. And now that you've survived what was sent to destroy you, the same forces that once mocked you are nervous. You're no longer confused. You're clear. You're no longer passive. You're powerful. You're no longer questioning your worth. You're walking in it. The very fire sent to consume you has become the fire that fuels you. You've been through the storm, but you didn't drown. You've been through the fire, but you didn't burn. You were forged. Every attack, every betrayal, every heartbreak, it all served a higher purpose. Chapter 2. The weapon formed was personal. The attack against you wasn't random. It was intimate, strategic, precise. It didn't come through strangers or obvious enemies. It came through familiar voices, through people you once prayed with, laughed with, trusted without question. It came through memories you thought you buried, through wounds you never fully healed. It came disguised as comfort, cloaked in familiarity, wrapped in the very things you once called home. Why? Because darkness studies you. It watches what breaks you. It observes what you reach for in your weakest moments. It memorizes the stories you don't tell anyone, the regrets, the fears, the patterns. The hit wasn't meant to just bruise you. It was meant to break you from within. Not just to wound your heart, but to infect your identity, to get you to question your worth, to second-guess your purpose, to convince you that maybe you were never chosen in the first place. This is why the betrayal stung so deeply. It came from someone you would have defended blindly. This is why the delay felt so hopeless. It hit right after you thought things were finally changing. This is why your mind felt like a battlefield. You weren't just fighting circumstances, you were fighting invisible triggers tied to your past. The weapon was formed with surgical precision, and it was personal for a reason. The enemy doesn't waste resources on someone who isn't a threat. It knew that a random storm wouldn't shake you. You've already endured too much for that. But an emotional storm, one that reached into your soul, touched old scars, whispered old lies in a new voice. That might work, and for a moment, it almost did. People turned cold for no reason. Connections you counted on crumbled overnight. Doors that looked open slammed shut in your face. Suddenly, everything familiar started to feel foreign. Your safe places became war zones. Your mind became loud with doubt. Your heart grew tired from the weight of invisible battles. But here's the part that defies logic. While the weapon was forming, your spirit was still rising. Even as life stripped you bare, something deep inside you refused to fold. You wept, but you didn't break. You felt lost, but never abandoned. Your prayers got quieter, but your faith got louder. You started hearing God in the silence, in the ache, in the waiting, in the nothingness. And that changed everything. Your aura, your spiritual frequency, your energy. It was being refined by the fire. The pressure didn't destroy you, it purified you. The chaos didn't weaken you, it carved out clarity. Every betrayal taught you discernment. Every delay grew your patience. Every closed door became a divine redirection. What they meant to unravel you only revealed the real you. The stronger the attack became, the brighter your light burned. The more personal the weapon, the more powerful the awakening. Because chosen ones aren't broken by pressure, they become diamonds under it. And even when your hands were empty, your soul was becoming full. See, they thought if they attacked your surroundings, you'd collapse. But they forgot. Your source was never external. Your peace was never in people. Your value was never in titles. Your hope was never in circumstances. You were plugged into something deeper, rooted in something eternal. The weapon formed, yes, and it came close. It hit hard. It shook your foundation. But it didn't prosper, because what was meant to destroy you only activated you. What was sent to end you initiated you. Chapter 3. The Assassin came close. There was a moment, you remember it, when everything around you felt heavier. Time slowed, colors dulled, laughter faded. It felt like something dark and unseen had entered your atmosphere. A presence you couldn't quite explain. It wasn't just stress. It wasn't just life being hard. This was different. It was a spiritual pressure that wrapped itself around your life like a storm cloud. For some, it came as sudden emotional breakdowns, unexplainable sadness, a hollow numbness that wouldn't lift. For others, it came in the form of accidents that nearly ended everything. Health scares, panic attacks, night terrors, strange dreams, unnatural fatigue. You felt like you were suffocating under something invisible, and no one around you could see it. That was the assassin. Not a person, not a random event, but a spiritual entity, a force, an energy, sent on assignment with one goal: to finish the job. It didn't kick the door down. It moved in silence. It crept through familiar patterns, through unhealed trauma, through people who unknowingly carried its influence. It whispered to you in the night. It played with your thoughts when you were alone. It made you question your purpose, your sanity, your worth. It echoed every lie you tried to unlearn and amplified every fear you buried. It knew you were close to something divine, on the edge of becoming someone unstoppable, and it wanted to take you out before you crossed that threshold. This wasn't just warfare, this was assassination, in the spirit. And it came close, very close. You almost gave up. You almost walked away from everything. You started deleting your dreams, shrinking your spirit, convincing yourself maybe you were just too much. Maybe you misunderstood your calling. Maybe you should just settle, be quiet, play small. You even considered ending it all, and you know exactly what it all means. But in that darkest place, something rose up inside you, something ancient, something sacred. Not loud, not forceful, but steady, unshakable. It was the voice of God, not shouting, but anchoring you. Because as that assassin approached your space, it encountered something unexpected: your aura, your spiritual frequency, your divine force field. See, the enemy underestimated what you carry. They didn't expect you to be so spiritually insulated. They didn't think you'd be able to pray through the silence, praise through the pain, stand when everything inside you wanted to fall. But your spirit was fortified in a way the assassin couldn't penetrate. You weren't just protected by God, you were inhabited by Him. Your aura wasn't just energy, it was the very presence of the Most High, radiating from your obedience, your purity, your surrender. And when the darkness tried to invade, it ran into divine fire. That's what saved you. Not luck, not coincidence, but divine authority operating inside you even when you didn't feel strong, even when you thought you were losing. Because here's the secret: the enemy can only assassinate versions of you. And the version they came to kill, the tired, unsure, wounded version of you, that version died. But the real you, the anointed you, the called, chosen, purified by fire you, that version rose from the ashes. You weren't just preserved, you were resurrected. The assassin came close, but not close enough. Because when you belong to God, even your near-death experiences become near-destiny encounters. And what tried to kill you becomes part of your testimony, a chapter in your rising, a sign that something eternal lives inside you, and it cannot be extinguished. Chapter 4. You were too anointed to be taken out. Let's make one thing clear. You weren't spared by accident. You weren't just lucky. What you survived, most wouldn't have. The weight, the betrayal, the spiritual warfare, the mental torment, it was designed to crush you. But it didn't. Why? Because your anointing is heavier than the hit. The reason you're still breathing, still standing, still rising, is because God has need of you. And what He anoints, He protects. Not from pain, but from destruction. Not from fire, but from being consumed by it. You were too anointed to be taken out. The enemy wasn't just trying to slow you down. He was trying to erase you, because you're a problem to darkness. Your voice carries light. Your presence shifts atmospheres. Your healing inspires others to rise. Your very existence is a walking contradiction to everything the enemy hoped you'd become. That's why it got so intense. That's why the pressure became unbearable. The moment you started walking in your truth, the moment you began breaking generational cycles, the moment you stopped looking for validation and started walking in revelation, you became a threat on a whole new level. But here's what darkness didn't calculate. Your anointing isn't surface level. It's not a performance. It's not a title. It's not based on external success. It's deep. It was forged in the fire of rejection, loneliness, and relentless obedience. It was poured on you in your wilderness. It grew while you were hidden. So when the assassin came for your identity, the anointing said, "Not this one." When depression tried to take you out, the anointing covered your mind. When people turned on you and lies were spoken, the anointing silenced every accusation with truth. When you had nothing left, no money, no strength, no plan, the anointing sustained you. Because the anointing isn't just oil, it's evidence. Proof that God marked you before anyone ever knew your name. It's the fingerprint of heaven on your soul. You were never meant to fit in, because you were chosen to stand apart. And chosen ones don't get to live easy lives. They live anointed lives. And anointed lives are dangerous to fear, to mediocrity, to every stronghold that's ever tried to keep your bloodline bound. That's why you were attacked. But that's also why you couldn't be stopped. Every setback was a setup. Every heartbreak was a redirection. Every delay was a hidden training ground. God was allowing what the enemy sent to destroy you to instead reveal you. You're not who you used to be. You've changed. You've evolved. And what's coming next isn't survival. It's activation, a new level, a deeper clarity, a supernatural authority. You're not just protected, you're positioned. So if you ever wonder why it felt like you were under siege, remember this. It's because hell could see the heaven on your life. And no matter how close the enemy came, it still couldn't touch what God sealed. You were too chosen, too covered, too anointed. Chapter 5. When the battle turns silent. After the chaos, there comes a quiet. After the storm, a strange stillness. No more sudden attacks, no more overwhelming pressure. Just silence. But don't be fooled. This silence isn't peace, it's positioning. It's that eerie calm after the spiritual bow has been drawn and released. The moment when you feel like something has shifted, but you can't quite explain it. You start sleeping again, but you still feel watchful. The phone stops ringing, but the atmosphere is heavy. People leave, and somehow you feel lighter, but also more alone. This is the phase where many get confused. They think it's over. They let their guard down. They stop praying like they used to. Stop seeking like they used to. Because they assume the absence of noise means the absence of war. But here's the truth. The battle didn't end. It evolved. See, the enemy isn't stupid. After the direct hits didn't work, after the pressure failed to break you, after the lies didn't shake you, after the assassin couldn't cross the boundary of your anointing, he changed tactics. The silence is his regrouping. It's strategic. He's watching you now, studying how you move, who you trust, what you post, how you worship, because you've become more dangerous in stillness than you ever were in the storm. But don't fear the silence. Own it. Because this is where your true transformation happens. This is where your spiritual senses sharpen. Your discernment heightens. You start seeing people for who they really are. Conversations feel different. You can't be around certain environments anymore. What once entertained you now irritates your spirit. You've outgrown old energies, and the silence proves it. This is also where divine separations happen. People begin to fall off, not because they're bad, but because they're no longer aligned. Your elevation exposes misalignment. God isn't being cruel. He's being clear. You prayed for purpose, and now he's removing distractions. And with each layer stripped away, you realize something else. You're not the same person who entered the war. You're more alert, more refined, quieter in the flesh, but louder in the spirit. You don't explain yourself like you used to. You don't entertain small talk or small minds. You don't seek validation. You walk in revelation. The silence becomes your sacred space. It's where God whispers strategies, where new blueprints are birthed, where old identities are laid to rest, where authority begins to take root, not the kind that comes from noise, but the kind that radiates from within. You're no longer reacting, you're commanding. You're no longer the one dodging arrows. You've become the one holding the sword. And this is why the silence is dangerous to darkness, because it means you're not surviving anymore. You're operating. You're not on defense. You're on divine assignment. You're not wondering what's next. You're hearing directly from heaven. The assassin bowed, not because it wanted to, but because it had no choice. It recognized something it couldn't conquer. But that doesn't mean the war is over. It means the game changed. You're no longer the hunted. You're the hunter now. No longer the storm's victim. You've become the storm. A storm wrapped in discipline, in stillness, in spiritual clarity. And when you move now, you move with heaven's backing. So don't fear the silence. Embrace it, because the quiet you feel around you is the sound of spiritual power being fortified within you. This is your preparation for dominion. Chapter 6. What the enemy now knows about you. Something has shifted, and not just within you, but in the way the enemy sees you. You're no longer underestimated. You're respected, not in a worldly sense, but in the realm of spirits, energies, and unseen forces. There's now a mark on your life that darkness recognizes, a code it has learned not to violate, Because the enemy now knows something it didn't fully realize before. You can't be easily broken. You're not naive anymore. You're not wide-eyed and gullible, handing out your energy to anything or anyone with a smile. You've seen too much, felt too much, endured too much. You've walked through the betrayal, and you didn't grow bitter, you got better. You've touched the flames of spiritual warfare and came out not just alive, but illuminated. You glow now, not with pride, but with power, real power, the kind that's born in caves, in silence, in pain, the kind that hell remembers. You were hunted, tracked, targeted, but here you are, thriving, not because life got easier, but because you got wiser. The enemy hoped the hit would crush you. Instead, it crowned you. That crown isn't gold. It's glory. It's authority. It's the invisible mantle you now carry. And even if you don't always feel it, trust me, they do. Spirits do, people do, environments do. Your aura has changed. It carries memory now. Spiritual memory. A history. A record. When dark forces approach, they feel it. They remember what happened the last time they tried to mess with you. They remember who stood beside you when they came for your mind. They remember who fought for you in silence when you had no words left to pray. They remember the God that backed you. You've become a walking warning sign to the forces of darkness. Touch not my anointed. That's why people stare at you differently now. That's why rooms feel tense when you walk in. That's why some avoid eye contact or suddenly shift their tone when you speak. It's not intimidation in the natural. It's recognition in the spirit. You're not loud, but your silence speaks. You're not confrontational, but your presence confronts every hidden thing. You don't need to prove yourself. Your energy already says, I've survived what you couldn't see. The attacks feel more distant now, not because the enemy gave up, but because you're not on the same level anymore. You've elevated. You're vibrating higher. You've aligned your frequency with purpose, with protection, with divine wisdom. You're not a victim. You're a vibration. And that vibration is disruptive to every lie, every false spirit, every counterfeit connection. You're not just avoiding darkness now, you're exposing it. Your very existence makes it uncomfortable. The enemy now knows you can't be lured with shallow bait. You don't chase what doesn't carry peace. You don't confuse noise for value. You'd rather walk alone in truth than surrounded by illusion. You are different now. And that difference, that spiritual maturity, that emotional mastery, that resilience, it terrifies darkness. You're no longer breakable. You're no longer predictable. You're no longer accessible to every energy that used to reach you. You've become guarded, not by walls, but by wisdom. Chapter 7. Walking in the aftermath of divine protection. Now, chosen one, you've entered a new season, not of battle, but of being. Your job is no longer to prove your worth, defend your light, or convince anyone of your calling. That part of the journey is over. Now, your only assignment is to live in full alignment with your purpose. Stay in your lane. Protect your peace. Keep your frequency high. Guard your spirit like royalty, because that's what you are. You've been marked, yes, but not by the wounds of your past. Now you walk with divine authority. The scars that once made you question your value have become sacred symbols of survival. You're no longer a target, you're a testimony. You've been through what most couldn't handle, and still, you shine. You don't have to fight like you did before. Those days of begging for clarity, praying through the pain, and wrestling in the dark have shaped you into something different. Now, you command, you speak, and the atmosphere responds. You pray, and strongholds break. You walk into a room, and without saying a word, everything shifts. Not because of arrogance, but because of alignment. You are no longer hidden, you are activated. Fully seen, fully aware, fully anointed. The old you would shrink, try to dim your light to make others comfortable. But not anymore. Now you understand that your glow is not a threat. It's a signal to those meant to walk with you, and a warning to those who came with harm in their hearts. And here's the most incredible part. The very forces that were sent to destroy you now retreat in silence. They know they can't touch you. They tried. They watched you in your weakest moments, planned your downfall, and waited for you to break. But you didn't. You rose. And now they're the ones who walk away, defeated by the light they couldn't comprehend. That chosen one is divine reversal. That's the spiritual plot twist no enemy saw coming. And it didn't happen because you fought harder. It happened because you surrendered deeper. You aligned. You trusted. You became who you were always meant to be.